You may recall that after winning the 2018 Championship playoff final, Fulham spent an absolute shedload of cash. Over £100 million was spent on new signings, a record for a newly promoted club at the time, since smashed by Nottingham Forest, in a desperate attempt to stay in the Premier League. It didn't work. Fulham were relegated with just 26 points, having won only 7 games all season, and a massive 10 points from safety. It could have been worse. They could have been Huddersfield. I mean, Jesus Christ, lads. But at least Huddersfield hadn't spent enough money to buy a single Typhoon jet. Apparently they cost £110 million, which is basically how much Fulham spent on players that season, and if military hardware and transfer expenditure price comparisons aren't your thing, well, it would appear that you're in the wrong place. Anyway, I wanted to take a look back at that 2018-19 Fulham squad in a rare return to the Where Are They Now format that used to be a frequent theme on this channel, to see whether they ought to have had such a miserable campaign, whether those signings were really that bad, and what they're up to now. I will start with the 11 that played most frequently in the league that season, before giving a quick rundown of the rest of the squad. Here is Fulham's relegated 2018-19-11. Where are they now? Sergio Rico, PSG. Talk about failing upwards. No Premier League goalkeeper conceded more goals than Sergio Rico did at Fulham in the 2018-19 season, yet the following season he found himself at PSG, where he now counts Kylian Mbappe, Neymar, and Lionel Messi among his teammates. It was considered more than a little cruel on Marcus Bettinelli that following an excellent season in the Championship, Fulham brought in first Spanish goalkeeper Fabri from Besiktas, followed by his compatriot Sergio Rico on loan from Sevilla. Nonetheless, Rico was still considered to be a real coup for the Cottagers, arriving in West London fresh off the back of 4 successive seasons as Sevilla's number 1, during which time the club won a couple of customary Europa League titles. Rico endured a tough start to life in the Premier League, it would be fair to say, not helped by a defence that could best be described as being pure distilled dog dirt. Well, perhaps not best described then, but you get the gist. Rico improved as the season went on, and even expressed an interest in sticking around following the club's relegation, but he ended up joining PSG on loan the following season instead. He must have been gutted, and then on a permanent deal worth €6 million in the summer of 2020. Rico has since played a grand total of 14 games for the Parisians, and Fulham flirted with the idea of re-signing him last summer before completing a deal for their primary target Bernd Leno. Denis Zerdoj, Club Bruges. A long-time servant of Fulham, who was signed from Belgian side Lokeren in the summer of 2016 and stuck around until February 2022, Denis Zerdoj only scored 6 goals in 155 games for Fulham, but one of those goals was extremely significant. A right-back primarily, but also capable of playing at left-back and centre-back, Zerdoj popped up with a rare goal against Derby County, which sent Fulham into the 2018 Championship playoff final. He was subsequently sent off in the final itself for a second bookable offence, but avoided ignominy as Fulham managed to hang on with only 10 men. Following 2 promotions and 2 relegations in 5 seasons, Zerdoj was sold before winning his 3rd promotion from the Championship at Craven Cottage, joining Club Bruges in his native Belgium midway through last season for a fee of €700,000. Callum Chambers, Aston Villa. One of 6 players signed on loan by Fulham in the 2018-19 season, Callum Chambers was a rare bright spark in what was a disastrous Fulham defensive unit overall, and he was actually voted Fulham's player of the season with 3 times as many votes as anyone else. Deputised primarily in defensive midfield, but also wide right and on both sides of centre-back during his single season in West London, many Fulham fans wanted to see the club keep hold of Chambers following relegation, but he returned to his parent club Arsenal instead. Chambers played a total of 122 games at Arsenal, only departing after 7.5 years with the Gunners in January 2022, when he joined Aston Villa. Chambers has been a bit part player at Villa this season, though he has frequently been introduced from the bench by Unai Emery late on in games during Villa's excellent run of recent form. Tim Ream, Fulham. The first player in this 11 who is still at Fulham, and the joint longest serving player at the club, Fulham signed Ream for £2 million from Bolton Wanderers in the summer of 2015. Since then, the American international, who has won 51 caps for the USMNT, has played almost 300 games at Craven Cottage. Much maligned by USMNT fans, Ream has been an outstanding servant to Fulham, and following his disappointing 2018-19 and 2020-21 relegation campaigns, it is pretty remarkable that he made the PFA Team of the Year in the Championship last season and has played every game in a Fulham side that is currently 10th in the Premier League table this season, aged 35. Nicknamed Tim the Rimjob Ream by friends and family, he has been brilliant for Fulham this season and is contracted to the club until 2024. He's not really nicknamed that, I just made that up, but how many of you believed it? Anyway, moving on. Joe Bryan, Nice. Another 2018 arrival, Joe Bryan was signed for £6 million by Fulham from Bristol City following promotion, but he has proved to be worth far more to the club than that. That's not just because he played 119 games for them over the next 4 seasons and made the 2019-20 PFA Championship Team of the Year. It is primarily because he scored both goals in extra time in the 2020 Championship playoff final to fire Fulham back into the Premier League. Those goals were worth around £135 million to Fulham, despite the fact that they got relegated again the following season. Bryan won his second promotion from the Championship with Fulham last season, this time as Championship title winners, but with Levan Kazawa arriving on loan from PSG and joining Anthony Robinson in the left-back department, he was rendered surplus to requirements. Bryan is still contracted to Fulham, but he has spent this season on loan at Nice in Ligue 1 and is set to become a free agent at the end of the campaign. I wouldn't mind him at Hull City on a free, to be honest. You know, just in case anyone from the club might be watching. André-Frank Zambo Anguissa, Napoli. The most expensive of Fulham's numerous expensive summer 2018 arrivals, André-Frank Zambo Anguissa set the Cottagers back a club record-breaking £30 million upon his arrival from Marseille. I was always told that Anguissa was a massive flop at Fulham, and clearly factually that was the case, but every time I watched him, he was one of the best players on the pitch. A brilliant footballer who is industrious, strong in the tackle, a fantastic athlete and gifted on the ball. It is a little bit mental to think that after excellent seasons on loan at Villarreal and Napoli, Fulham ended up selling Anguissa for roughly half what they paid for him. Still aged only 27, there haven't been many better midfielders in European football this season, and he is about to be part of the first Napoli side to win a Serie A title in 33 years. Jean-Michel Seri, Hull City. Another heavily criticised Fulham signing. It is far too simplistic, as a lot of people did at the time, just to say that Fulham signed bad players in the summer of 2018. In actual fact, they signed some very good players, some not so good ones, and never found a cohesive or effective way of organising them all together. A midfield pivot of André-Frank Zambo Anguissa and Jean-Michel Seri is not just one good enough to compete in the Premier League, but in Europe. And a year before he signed for Fulham, Barcelona had tried and failed to activate Seri's €40 million release clause whilst he was playing for OGC Nice. He ended up costing Fulham £25 million, but following relegation, he went on loan firstly to Galatasaray and then Bordeaux. Seri returned to Fulham last season in a far more settled and structured side and illustrated why he had been so sought after at Nice as Fulham won the Championship title. A hefty salary and the arrival of the outstanding João Palhinha convinced Fulham not to offer Seri a new contract, and last summer he signed for Hull City, the club that I support. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before. Seri is very good at football and should probably be playing at a higher level, but hey, I'm not complaining. Tom Kearney, Fulham. From a current Hull City midfielder to a former one, Tom Kearney came through the Tigers' youth ranks and used to live not that far from me. Always gifted, Kearney was released by Leeds United at 16 due to his size, which is an incredibly stupid reason to release anyone other than probably a goalkeeper, but he scored a brilliant goal for Hull City in the Premier League against Everton at the age of only 19. Unfortunately, things didn't quite work out for Kearney after he suffered a serious injury at the start of Steve Bruce's time at the club, and he was sold to Blackburn Rovers. He soon proved himself to be an outstanding midfielder at Championship level though, snapped up by Fulham for £3 million in 2015. A two-time PFA Team of the Year inclusion in the Championship, Kearney has played over 270 games for Fulham, as well as having captained the club for the last 5 years. He has been used far more sparingly by Marco Silva this season, but his attitude has been fantastic, and you can see why Fulham would want to keep him around. André-Schurrle, retired. The only player in Fulham's relegated 2018-19 most frequent 11, and one of only 2 players in their entire squad who has since retired, André-Schurrle quit the sport in 2020, stating that the mental demands of top-flight football had become too great and had started to take their toll. Despite the brevity of it, Schurrle was just 29 when he hung up his boots, he achieved more than 99% of players who play far more games over a great many more seasons. A Premier League title winner with Chelsea in 2015, and most notably a World Cup winner with Germany in 2014, Schurrle joined Fulham on loan from Borussia Dortmund in the 2018-19 campaign. Accused of being lightweight and not fully committed at times by some, Schurrle still scored 6 goals in 24 games for Fulham during a relatively miserable campaign, one of which won the January 2019 Premier League and BBC Goal of the Month awards. Ryan Sessegnon, Tottenham Hotspur. Fulham's golden boy for so many years, Ryan Sessegnon played a ridiculous amount of football for Fulham at an extremely young age. Tipped for stardom from the age of 15, which was when he first began representing England, not the senior team, the under-16s, Sessegnon made his Fulham debut when he was just 16 years and 81 days old. He went on to play 30 games that season, 52 the following year, in which he won the EFL Championship Player of the Year award, and 38 in his final season at the club, which was that 2018-19 campaign. When one thinks that that was almost 4 years ago, and how highly rated he was at the time, it really puts in perspective how underwhelming his time at Tottenham has been. Sessegnon is still only 22, it is always worth re-emphasising, and he joined Spurs for £25 million in 2019. Personally, I would like to see Sessegnon leave Spurs, as would most Spurs fans I suspect, though for rather different reasons, since I think that there is still a serious player in there, and who knows, maybe even a return to Fulham. Alexander Mitrovic, Fulham. Fulham's main man for the last 5 years, with the exception of the 2020-21 season when Scott Parker decided that he hated him. I must admit that I don't love some of Mitrovic's antics, but as a striker, he is absolute dynamite. Brought to England by Newcastle from Anderlecht, Mitrovic joined Fulham first on loan in the Championship and then permanently for a fee of £27 million in the summer of 2018. Mitrovic has scored 96 goals in 182 games for Fulham, 43 of them coming in just 44 games last season, which was a record for the Championship since its early to mid-2000s rebrand. Mitrovic started this season with a bang as well, though it has been disrupted by injuries, fitness problems, and most recently of all, an 8-game ban for misconduct towards a referee. Prior to that setback, Mitrovic had scored 11 goals in 21 Premier League games, which is superb, and it's no surprise that Fulham's form has suffered massively since his recent suspension. That is the Fulham 11 that played most frequently in the Premier League in the 2018-19 season, but now for the rest of their squad that campaign. Marcus Bettinelli, who was dumped in favour of Sergio Rico following promotion, is now Chelsea's number 3, meanwhile Fulham's number 3 that season, the Spaniard Fabri, who was signed from Besiktas, now plays for Numancia in the 3rd tier of Spanish football. Maxime Lemarchand played more games for Fulham in the 2018-19 season than anyone else who missed out on my most frequent 11, missing out only because there were 4 defenders who featured slightly more often than him. And the Frenchman now stars for relegation-threatened Strasbourg in Ligue 1. Fellow defenders Timothy Fosu-Mensah now plays for Bayer Leverkusen. Cyrus Christie is a teammate of Jean-Michel Series at the greatest club that this planet has ever known. Alfie Mawson was sadly forced to retire due to recurring knee injuries earlier this year, also aged 29, just like Schurrle when he retired. A Norwegian international, Harvard Nordvelt, who made just 5 Premier League appearances that season, now plays for a little-known team called Skjold IL in the 4th tier of Norwegian football. In midfield, longtime Fulham servant Kevin McDonnell now plays for Exeter City. Former PSG trainee Niskins Cabano is still at Fulham. Guinea international Ibrahim Cisse now plays for Oral Yekaterinburg in Russia. Stefan Johansson now captains Fulham's troubled West London rivals Queen's Park Rangers. Lazar Markovic, who made just 1 substitute appearance on loan at Craven Cottage that season, is currently on loan at Trabzonspor from Gaziantep, and Harvey Elliott, who became the youngest player of the Premier League era for Fulham that season, before swiftly departing for Liverpool, is still at Anfield, and still looks to have a very bright future in the game, despite suffering a horrible ankle dislocation a little over 18 months ago. In the forward areas, who could forget about Abubakar Kamara, aka AK-47, who infamously took a penalty off Alexander Mitrovic and then saw his own efforts saved against Huddersfield Town, infuriating Claudio Ranieri amidst a series of other scandals, which saw him sent out on loan to Yeni Malatyaspor in Turkey. He now plays for Aris in Greece, as well as representing Mauritania at international level. Elsewhere, Luciano Vieto, who spent the season on loan at Fulham from Atletico Madrid, now plays alongside Odion Ighalo for Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. Ryan Babel, who actually made a pretty big impact in his half-season at Fulham, is now playing in Turkey's 2nd tier for Eyüpspor, who are managed by Arda Turan. And last but not least, Floyd Ayite, who left Fulham at the end of that season to join Gençlerbirliği. They love Turkey, did Fulham's 2018-19 second string, now plays for Valenciennes in Ligue 2. Fulham's managers from 2018-19, all 3 of them, namely Slavisa Jokanovic, Claudio Ranieri and Scott Parker, now manage Dinamo Moscow, Cagliari and no one, in that order, with Parker having been sacked by both Bournemouth and Club Brugge this season. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if that was the case, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure, of course, that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for both this channel, HITC Sevens, and my backup channel, Alfie Potshammer, both of which should be on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might want to watch after this one. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.